Chapter Xuanhuan, the eerie little tree. Pain. A searing pain that radiated through his entire body. Cold. A biting chill that sent uncontrollable tremors through him. His head throbbed, as if he was suffering from a brutal hangover. But his limbs felt leaden, the simple act beyond his capabilities. Several attempts later, he finally succeeded. His head swam, his thoughts a jumbled mess. Zhang Liang found himself in a gigantic primal forest. He used the word gigantic, because the trees surrounding him were unbelievably huge, blotting out the sun, leaving him in perpetual twilight. Even the thinnest trees would require 7 or 8 people to encircle with outstretched arms. Heaven only knew how long this forest had existed. Zhang Liang felt like he was dreaming, disoriented and confused. He recalled being at home, had given up alcohol long ago. He couldn't possibly be drunk. The surrounding environment, undeniably a primeval forest, was jarring. He lived in the city, had been working in Chongqing just moments ago. How could he find himself in a primeval forest? Was it some kind of elaborate prank? But he quickly dismissed the prank theory. If it was a prank, the cost would be astronomical. He was just an ordinary office worker. No one had the motive or the resources to pull off something like this. Zhang Liang's head pounded even harder. The briefest of thoughts sent a stabbing pain through his skull. His whole body felt weak, increasingly uncomfortable, as if he'd consumed 2 pints of fiery baijia. His head reeling, his spirit utterly depleted. Defeated, Zhang Liang sat down heavily, hoping to regain some strength, planning an escape from this forest as soon as possible. Who knew what lurked within its depths? Everything here seemed magnified, while he felt diminished. Even the exposed roots of the ancient trees were thicker than his waist. Their size was preposterous, as if only the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park could be worthy companions to their colossal trunks. Zhang Liang even saw trees of even greater size. Completely beyond imagination, simply unbelievable. There couldn't be trees this large in the greater Khingan range. Could this be the Amazon? Roar! A deafening roar, powerful enough to shake the heavens and earth, nearly tore Zhang Liang's eardrum. Every hair on Zhang Liang's body stood on end, his pupils constricted uncontrollably, a chill rising from his feet to his scalp, which felt as if it were exploding. The scene before him was simply too shocking. A gigantic, monstrous ape roared to the heavens, its cry echoing like thunder. The trees here were already incredibly tall. 100-meter-tall ancient trees were commonplace, yet this ape was even taller, towering above the surrounding vegetation. Its ferocious form was visible from afar. The ape's muscles were incredibly developed, its thick arms resembled massive pillars, and 8 distinct abdominal muscles were clearly visible on its chest and abdomen. Its physique would shame any bodybuilder. Its entire body was covered in silver fur, and imposing like a god of war. Its 2 massive fists pounded its chest repeatedly, showcasing its power and might, brazenly displaying its overwhelming dominance. As if in response, several more roars echoed from the distance. Even from far away their power was immense, shaking the very forest. Zhang Liang felt like he was going insane. He could see a huge tiger leaping through the trees, a giant eagle soaring through the air, and a grizzly bear roaring "ow," and they all seemed to be targeting the giant ape. The giant ape didn't retreat, continuing to roar in what seemed to be a response to the others, but to Zhang Liang, it appeared more like a challenge. The beasts became even more agitated, rushing towards the ape with increased speed. This seemed to be a battle for supremacy among beasts. A competition of strength and power among the strongest predators, vying for the title of king. Zhang Liang felt his mind reeling. Was the world changing too fast, or was he just too ignorant? This was clearly no place for him. Even ordinary tigers in the wild would lament their fate and await death with closed eyes, let alone this monstrous beast. A creature utterly defying the laws of nature. Regardless of Zhang Liang's inner turmoil, the violent ape and the newcomer had already clashed. Without any hesitation they collided, their battle earth-shattering, rocks flying. Ancient trees snapping. 2 demonic figures locked in combat, utterly beyond the realm of mortals. Zhang Liang felt a strange, escalating headache, rendering thought almost impossible. Yet questions relentlessly plagued his mind, driving him close to madness. Why was he here? Why were these monstrous beasts here? Was this even Earth? And if it was Earth, where was this? Countless questions flooded his mind, only to be replaced by even more before he could find answers. Zhang Liang had no answer. His headache now overwhelming, threatening to render him unconscious. He felt something was about to burst from his skull, splitting his head in 2. Cold sweat poured down Zhang Liang's face, his veins bulging, his head throbbing violently. The excruciating pain overwhelmed him, leaving no room for thought, while the roars of the battling beasts grew ever more intense. The violent ape punched a giant tiger, sending it flying, only to be ambushed by the giant eagle. The eagle's talons tore several long gashes across its back, spraying blood. Enraged, the violent ape swung its massive arms to retaliate, but the agile eagle dodged, tearing more deep wounds into the ape's flesh, eliciting a series of furious roars. Zhang Liang felt as if his head would explode like a watermelon. The intense pain finally subsided. He was free, yet he could still think. He was still alive. He even saw a small sapling in his mind, momentarily believing he was dreaming. Experiencing hallucinations, the sapling was small, no more than a meter tall, yet in the void of his mind it took root and soared. To Zhang Liang it appeared to pierce the clouds, its peak invisible. This strange sensation only amplified the unsettling feeling. Its branches were adorned with vibrant verdant leaves, yet its trunk was covered in aged bark, etched with a network of crisscrossing lines resembling gigantic cracks in the earth, imbuing the sapling with a profound sense of age and history. Zhang Liang's hair stood on end, If this eerie sapling appeared in the outside world, he would have praised its ancient charm, perhaps even considering its market value, but appearing in his mind, he found it utterly unacceptable, experiencing a creeping horror akin to watching a terrifying film. The violent ape and the giant beast were locked in a life or death struggle, their battle reaching its climax. The ape, drenched in its powerful body riddled with wounds, bled profusely. Its opponent fared no better, in fact, considerably worse. The giant eagle had lost its former grace and agility. A savage blow from the ape had left it wounded, and its ability to remain airborne was a testament to its status as a beast king. Yet it was in grave danger, struggling to stay aloft, barely holding on against the ape's relentless attacks, at any moment risking being plucked from the sky. Fortunately, it had allies, preventing its complete subjugation. The giant tiger and the violent bear constantly harassed the ape, inflicting many of its wounds. Chunks of flesh were torn away, spurting blood, but they too were spent. Battered and bruised by the ape's attacks, the tiger's tail was broken, its body scarred, the majestic king marking on its forehead was gone, the skin torn away by the ape, revealing raw, bloody flesh. The brutal bear was also faring poorly. His left arm was broken and completely useless, and one of his hind legs was lame from a blow landed by the violent ape during their recent battle. Yet the three giant beasts refused to retreat, leaving Zhang Liang utterly perplexed. This frenzied battle was exponentially more explosive than any Hollywood blockbuster. Zhang Liang, witnessing it firsthand, was mesmerized and utterly captivated. After observing for a while, he made a startling discovery. The violent ape appeared to be terribly beaten, its body covered in wounds, and it let out roars of fury from time to time. However, its eyes were clear and unwavering, devoid of any panic, shining with an intelligence that sent a chill down Zhang Liang's spine. The ape seemed to possess intelligence, giving Zhang Liang an unsettling feeling. Could this be a world of fantasy? Although the ape was covered in wounds and bleeding profusely, Zhang Liang noticed that the wounds, while numerous, were not on vital areas. Many were also situated beneath the ape's powerful muscles, and thus didn't bleed much. Although the blood appeared to have stained the ape's fur crimson, the injuries it had sustained weren't actually that severe. In contrast, the other beast kings were mostly beaten badly and helpless, their bones broken and limbs mangled. What puzzled Zhang Liang was that even in this state, none of the beast kings retreated. This was highly unusual, completely defying the laws of nature. The ferocious giant eagle let out a piercing shriek before diving from the sky at incredible speed like a bolt of lightning, seemingly unstoppable. Its sharp talons aimed for the violent ape's massive eyes, intent on inflicting a crippling blow. The brutal bear roared to the heavens and charged forward, its enormous paw smashing towards the ape's chest. The ferocious tiger, its fangs bared, silently launched an attack from the ape's left side, bereft of the majesty of a king of beasts, maimed by the ape. Now, like a wolf king, it aimed for the ape's throat, striving for a one-hit kill. The three beast kings launched a simultaneous attack, their movements so coordinated it seemed like countless rehearsals. They cut off all of the rampaging ape's escape routes. Under such an assault, the rampaging ape seemed to have no chance of survival, about to be killed by the combined might of the beast kings. Zhang Liang had always felt that the rampaging ape was more than it appeared. Holding back its true strength, he didn't believe it would be killed so easily, but now his confidence wavered. The rampaging ape seemed on the verge of death, completely helpless. The flashes of intelligence he'd seen in its eyes before now seemed like a delusion. Zhang Liang watched intently. Although the rampaging ape's demise seemed inevitable, he still wanted to witness the end, but the swift turn of events left him dumbfounded. The rampaging ape roared, a sound so earth-shattering it nearly knocked Zhang Liang unconscious. Throughout the previous battle, this rampaging ape had never made such a tremendous sound. The three beast kings were momentarily stunned, their movements slowing. The rampaging ape's steel-like claws grabbed the swooping giant eagle as if it were a chick. With a powerful exertion it tore the eagle in two. The horrifying display of strength was awe-inspiring, a torrent of blood raining down like a crimson shower. At that moment the sapling in Zhang Liang's mind suddenly sprang into action. He felt a surge of immense energy flood his body, accompanied by excruciating pain. In this moment of agony, the pain paradoxically sharpened his dulled mind, even as his body underwent a rapid strengthening. His height was changing, but the pain was unbearable. His bones and muscles were being reshaped, undergoing a profound transformation. Meanwhile, the giant eagle's carcass, casually discarded by the rampaging ape, rapidly withered and vanished in the blink of an eye. The energy flowing into Zhang Liang intensified, as if an invisible thread were draining the eagle's life force and pouring it into him. Zhang Liang's teeth were practically ground to dust. He wanted to roar, but the muscles transforming throughout his body rendered his vocal cords useless. He could only curl into a ball, writhing on the ground. Though he had slain the giant eagle, the attacks of the grizzly bear and the tiger arrived in an instant. The giant ape was equally terrifying. Facing the bear's massive paw, it didn't dodge or weave, but returned a blow with its own paw, directly repelling the bear. Renowned for its strength, another massive swipe sent the charging tiger flying. The giant ape pounded its chest with iron fists, proclaiming its supreme authority. Its previous feigned weakness had been for this moment. What was terrifying wasn't just its strength, but the ape's astonishing intelligence. The giant ape didn't give the other two beast kings a chance. Charging straight ahead in a simple, direct assault, it pinned the tiger beneath it, raining blows upon its head. Each blow of its iron-like claws shook the earth within moments. The tiger's brains were splattered, and it lay lifeless. The grizzly bear, awed by the ape's ferocity, hesitated to advance. The sapling pulsed again. The dagger, like the giant eagle before it, rapidly withered and vanished, while an even greater surge of energy flooded Zhang Liang's body. His physique was strengthened by this overwhelming force, the dual surges of power intensifying his agony. He felt as though he had fallen into hell. The grizzly bear, startled by this transformation, turned and fled. The giant ape roared to the heavens, blood streaming from its wounds, yet exuding unparalleled dominance, its power terrified. Chapter Laozen 2 Traces of Humanity. Zhang Liang writhed in agony, wanting to faint, but a strange force kept him conscious, a veritable torture. He didn't know how long it lasted, but the pain finally ceased. The seemingly endless enhancement ended. Heartfelt joy. It was his body celebrating its own evolution. His height, originally around 1.7 meters, had grown to nearly 1.9 meters. His muscles were powerfully developed, full of strength. Yet not overly bulky, his physique was lean, radiating power and beauty. Zhang Liang felt incredibly strong. He could snap massive ancient trees with a flick of his wrist, and easily leap over 10 meters. His physical capabilities were simply superhuman. What astonished him even more was the sapling. It had effortlessly enhanced him to such a degree of strength, a power unprecedented and unheard of. The mysterious sapling's presence on him remained a puzzle. What were its intentions? He didn't know if it was the cause of his past life bearing fruit in the present, or if the fruits of the future were shaping his present. He didn't know and couldn't know. Besides, there wasn't much to gain from him, since the sapling was immensely beneficial, helping him survive in this strange place. There was no need to overthink it. Such a magnificent sapling, others would likely beg for one. He should be grateful for this sapling, now possessing such immense power, approaching invincibility. As long as he didn't seek out trouble, survival in this bizarre place would be extremely simple. Having secured his safety, he began to explore, trying to understand where he was and find a way home as soon as possible. With such an incredible stroke of luck, once he returned home, he would undoubtedly rise to the top, achieving things others could only dream of without much effort. His enhanced body was incredibly strong. He was practically a mini superhuman. Even in the forest, his speed was exceptional. He walked for most of the day without feeling tired, his body like a tireless machine, possessing endless energy. Before long, Zhang Liang found himself at the seaside. The azure blue ocean lifted his spirits. The vast expanse was enough to wash away all his worries. The ocean, but wasn't I inland? How will I get back from this immense ocean? Did I receive a gift from the Dragon King? Lying on, enjoying an unprecedented sunbath, Zhang Liang quickly regained his composure. Despite the incredible opportunity, he felt utterly alone in this strange new land. He began to ponder the reasons, wondering who had played this cruel joke, transporting him from his home to this eerie island. His mind raced, a chaotic jumble of thoughts he couldn't untangle or comprehend until finally, he let it go. Who would play such a joke on me? This is clearly an island, and to get to a place like this, you'd need at least a cruise ship or a plane. But there's nothing, not even a trace of human presence. Zhang Liang often found himself talking to himself. Sometimes, loneliness is humanity's greatest enemy. He continued to explore the island. He knew so little, his random thoughts leading nowhere. Perhaps he'd find something else on the island. Half a year later, unnamed island, the fire crackled merrily, spitting sparks that quickly died out. A fish skewered over the flames, sizzled, its aroma rising temptingly. Yet Zhang Liang felt restless. He'd been on this nameless island for so long, he was almost forgetting what civilized life was like. His daily struggle for survival against wild beasts had thrust him into a primitive existence. The island was bizarre, exceeding human imagination. Through his relentless exploration, he'd gained a general understanding of it, but this only deepened his confusion. The island was unimaginably large, not at all like a typical island. Even in half a year, Zhang Liang hadn't managed to traverse it all. Considering his enhanced physique, he was practically a superhuman. This was remarkable. Still, he'd found no trace of civilization. All there was endless wilderness, a place that felt like it belonged to the primordial age. On the island, he battled numerous behemoths, slaying countless ferocious beasts. During these encounters, he absorbed immense energy, undergoing several physical enhancements that made him incredibly powerful. Even he didn't know the full extent of his strength. The island was bizarre and terrifying. The creatures were abnormally large. He also discovered many species extinct on Earth, even witnessing herds of dinosaurs, a sight that left him speechless. It was a biological miracle, a place biologists would adore, yet he detested it with a passion. The sheer contrast between life in a civilized era and the primitive world was indescribable. He even slept with one eye open, fearing he'd be devoured by some monstrous beast. Only those who have survived in the wilderness truly understand the greatness of civilization and long for the comforts of the city. He recalled a night early on when a tiger woke him with a bite. The tiger's saliva dripped to the ground. If his defenses hadn't been incredibly high, he would have been eaten. After that, he only slept in caves, barricading the entrances to keep wild animals out. In the second month, he discovered a gigantic city on the island, built on the edge, appearing incredibly majestic. Initially, Zhang Liang was overjoyed at the discovery, thinking he could finally return to human society. But reality delivered a harsh blow. While the city was a beacon of hope in his desperate yearning for a fellow human, he also questioned whether anyone could truly survive on such a terrifying island. The city walls were riddled with holes, eroded beyond recognition by wind and up close. He realized it wasn't so much a city as a single colossal wall, likely built to defend against the terrifyingly large beasts of the island. The wall was impossibly high, enough to deter most creatures, but Zhang Liang scaled it in just a few agile movements. Such a climb was nothing to him. To his disappointment, however, he found nothing of significance, no port, no ships, only a group of indigenous islanders who attacked him relentlessly, forcing him to retreat. Several attempts to approach ended in failure. The natives were completely uncommunicative, attacking on sight. Zhang Liang didn't want to hurt them, they were his own kind, albeit black but still human. He could only avoid them occasionally. Zhang Liang would pilfer some embers from them. Making fire with friction was simply too arduous. Zhang Liang admitted defeat on that front. The island was incredibly strange, teeming with bizarre creatures, but Zhang Liang never saw the giant ape again. He did, however, encounter a similarly enormous chimpanzee. Equally terrifying and unbeatable, Zhang Liang dared not eat the island's creatures. Their appearance was simply too unsettling. He found himself unable to bring himself to eat them. Feeling like he was letting down the great eating empire, he mostly hunted by the sea, sticking to the more normal-looking marine life. He picked up a grilled fish from the fire, inhaled its aroma, and found the temptation irresistible. Without waiting for it to cool, he took a large bite. His superhuman constitution handled the heat easily. The grilled fish was delicious, momentarily reminding him of life in the civilized world. Looks like my skills haven't deteriorated, Zhang Liang mused. Intoxicated by his own grilling prowess, honed over his time on the island. Despite this fleeting joy, he remained troubled, unsure when he would return home. The satisfaction of the grilled fish gave way to melancholy. While he could find joy in hardship, the problem remained inescapable. Wandering freely through the forest, he now moved with ease across the island. Zhang Liang sought out a giant beast to test his progress. It was the only joy left to him. Roar! The forest trembled from the all-day roar. A monstrous terrifying head emerged from the woods, its gaping maw filled with rows of sharp, jagged teeth. This was a Tyrannosaurus, also known as Tyrannosaurus rex, meaning tyrant lizard king. One of history's largest carnivores and the most famous meat-eating dinosaur, was one of the last surviving dinosaur species, averaging 11.5 meters in length, with some reaching 14.6 meters. Average hip height was 3.4 meters off the ground, and a maximum hip height of 5.2 meters. Average weight was 9 tons, reaching a maximum of 14.85 tons. Its bite force was the strongest of any terrestrial creature and among carnivorous dinosaurs, and it also possessed the robust body among carnivorous dinosaurs. It lived during the Maastrichtian age of the late Cretaceous period, approximately 68.5 to 65 million years ago, making it one of the last avian dinosaurs before the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. Fossils have been found in the United States, Canada, and Mexico in North America, a wider distribution than other tyrannosaurids. It was one of the last dinosaurs to go extinct, along with other late surviving carnivores like Carnotaurus, Tarbosaurus and Xuanhuan. It was also the strongest known land carnivore in history, easily overpowering. Zhang Liang didn't know why this island harbored a Tyrannosaurus, a creature long extinct, but this didn't deter him from challenging it. Conquering legendary creatures was always exhilarating. Zhang Liang's arrival angered the Tyrannosaurus, though it didn't take him seriously. Such a small creature could be swallowed whole in a single bite, and it intended to do just that. The massive head lunged forward with impossible speed, its sharp teeth bared, a river of saliva dripping from its jaws. But Zhang Liang surprised it, leaping from the ground, not to evade, but to dive straight into the Tyrannosaurus' open maw. The Tyrannosaurus rex, completely unprepared, hadn't expected such a small insect to dare attack it, and was caught completely off guard when Zhang Liang leaped directly into its mouth. But its reaction was lightning fast, and it immediately clamped its jaws shut. Its sharp, densely packed teeth were like two guillotines, threatening to bisect Zhang Liang. A normal human would have been swallowed whole, but Zhang Liang, having been enhanced several times by the sapling, was practically superhuman, possessing almost demonic physical capabilities. He didn't dodge, but instead punched directly upward, smashing a large hole in the Tyrannosaurus rex upper jaw. A torrent of blood erupted, spraying Zhang Liang's face and nearly blinding him, while his arm disappeared completely into the creature's jaw. The Tyrannosaurus rex roared in pain, wildly shaking its head to try and dislodge Zhang Liang, but getting rid of him proved more difficult than getting him in. Inside the beast's mouth, Zhang Liang continued to punch, relentlessly advancing towards its brain. Finally, after smashing through a bone blocking his path, he reached his target. Roar! With a roar that shook the forest, the mountain-like body of the Tyrannosaurus rex collapsed. Every beast in the woods fell silent, unsure what had driven their king to such madness. By the time Zhang Liang climbed out of the Tyrannosaurus rex head, the creature was still struggling. But Zhang Liang knew it was only a death throw, the last vestiges of its powerful life force. It wouldn't last long. It reduced its brain to mush. It was just bad luck for the Tyrannosaurus rex. It had foolishly opened its mouth in front of Zhang Liang, a fatal mistake. Zhang Liang felt a pang of regret. If it had a weapon, it would have been much easier, but with his strength, he hadn't been able to find a suitable one, a significant drawback. The sapling had given him superhuman strength but not superhuman weapons. Chapter Darren 3 Departure. Another surge of immense energy flooded his body, relentlessly strengthening Zhang Liang's physique. The pain remained, but it was far less intense than before. After countless enhancements, Zhang Liang had become incredibly strong, and the pain was no longer unbearable. The enormous Tyrannosaurus rex vanished in an instant, and Zhang Liang's body underwent yet another strengthening, transforming him into something akin to a monstrous beast. However, Zhang Liang was too exhausted to move. The battle with the Tyrannosaurus rex had drained him of his energy. He casually struck down an animal resembling a goat. Though it was unusually large, Zhang Liang tore off a hind leg, intending to use it for dinner. He casually carried it towards the seaside. He had no other choice. he couldn't make a fire, and could only steal fire from the natives within the seaside city walls. Fire was difficult to preserve and prevented long-distance travel, forcing him to live near the coast. The natives had long since grown accustomed to this. They had tried various methods to capture Zhang Liang, but none had managed to harm the monstrous man. Eventually, they even started leaving fires burning on the walls for him to take, transforming it into a strange ritual. Zhang Liang was content with this arrangement. They coexisted peacefully. Being human himself, he didn't want to harm them. Though constantly evading them was also a source of frustration, but something felt off this time. When Zhang Liang emerged, it was already night. Although this didn't affect him, his enhanced body saw as clearly in the dark as in daylight. And night was even better for hunting. It significantly impacted the natives, who usually didn't venture out at night. From afar, Zhang Liang heard countless screams and shouts from the city walls, deafening and earth-shattering. This was unthinkable in the past. Attracting a powerful beast king was suicidal. Huge bonfires blazed atop the tall city walls, illuminating them like daylight. A beast king seemed to be moving in the mountains, and the surrounding area was eerily silent. Zhang Liang was surprised. At first he wasn't sure, but now he understood this was a sacrifice. He had witnessed one before. The sacrifice was a living person, bound to a wooden frame, offered to a giant black chimpanzee. When Zhang Liang first saw the chimpanzee, he thought it was a relative of the violent ape, tall, strong, fierce in appearance, and equally brutal and terrifying. At that time, he was no match for the chimpanzee and avoided it from a distance. Zhang Liang knew that there was indeed a giant black chimpanzee in the mountains now, coming to claim its offering. Zhang Liang felt unlucky and changed direction. Although his strength was immense, his body was too small compared to the chimpanzee. Facing this enormous creature, he felt utterly helpless. This strange tribe seemed to have formed a bizarre symbiotic relationship with the chimpanzee. Zhang Liang had never seen a chimpanzee hunt near this tribe's territory. Zhang Liang chose another path, avoiding the chimpanzee and no longer heading in its direction. I didn't want to fight the chimpanzees, but I still needed to steal the fire. I couldn't let the chimpanzee's offering stop me. I needed to eat dinner. As Zhang Liang approached the offering, Caucasian woman, bound to a massive wooden frame, her clothes clearly indicated she was from modern society. This filled Zhang Liang with overwhelming excitement. It meant this was indeed Earth, not another world. There were so many Earth-based time travel novels, movies, and TV shows that Zhang Liang was incredibly worried. Had he time traveled? This question had been tormenting Zhang Liang for days. He wanted to see his parents and family, not spend his life on this strange island, but he couldn't be certain yet. He had to save the woman first. How could a Caucasian woman appear in this bizarre place? Regardless of his thoughts, he had to save the woman first. Without hesitation, Zhang Liang charged towards the wooden frame, reaching it in a few strides. Because of the sacrificial ceremony, the natives stayed far away from the offerings, not standing nearby. The white woman, designated as a sacrifice, saw someone approaching and frantically tried to call for help. Earlier, the woman had been bound in mid-air, yet she hadn't appeared particularly panicked, continuously attempting to free herself. Only the necklace of white bones around her neck lent a somewhat comical air to the situation. Zhang Liang didn't hesitate. He kicked the wooden frame apart, catching the falling woman and swiftly severing the ropes binding her. Roar! A thunderous roar erupted nearby, followed by gigantic beast claw. An enormous gorilla enraged lunged to seize both Zhang Liang and the sacrifice. Zhang Liang spun around and retaliated with a punch. The knuckles of his small fist stood out in stark contrast to the enormous, menacing beast's claw. The gorilla towered over 20 meters tall, while Zhang Liang was barely 2. The clash of their fists was a ludicrous, comical sight. An ant challenging an elephant. They were opponents of entirely different weight classes, now locked in direct confrontation. Yet the result was shocking. Zhang Liang, smaller than the gorilla's hand, actually repelled the beast. Zhang Liang was also sent flying by the gorilla's ferocious strength, carrying the woman he held in his arms a considerable distance. "Oh my God, Fa Sen!" The woman was incredibly surprised, almost disbelieving, and continuously screamed. Though Zhang Liang couldn't understand a word, Zhang Liang had returned it to his English teacher long ago. He only understood the first sentence. If his English teacher knew, she'd probably be furious. Time didn't allow her any time for surprise. Zhang Liang grabbed her and turned to run without looking back. The enormous gorilla roared, charging after them. The natives on the city walls screamed and scattered in terror. The gorilla didn't care. It only pursued Zhang Liang, or rather its offering. Zhang Liang didn't know. Zhang Liang could easily escape, but he couldn't abandon the woman. His way home depended on her. He needed to know how she'd arrived on this island and whether she had any companions. While dodging the gorilla, Zhang Liang still found the energy to taunt it. "Don't just keep chasing me! I can't stand your hulking, clumsy self. Go away, find your fellow brute to play with! Only the silverback gorilla on this island is your match, not me! Go have your epic battle." Zhang Liang continuously verbally provoked the gorilla, even though it couldn't understand. But this had always been Zhang Liang's way of relieving boredom. Otherwise, after living alone on this desolate island for so long, he would have gone mad. Only by doing so could he remind himself that he was a member of civilized society, not a savage. After spending so long on the island, he could change his habits overnight. Bang bang bang. Zhang Liang heard the gunshots and instinctively shrank his neck. This was a reflex. Even though Xiao Shu's enhancements had made him fearless, the guns weren't aimed at him, but at the enormous chimpanzee. Its massive body made an excellent target. The continuous barrage of gunfire enraged the chimpanzee. While the shots couldn't seriously injure it, they caused considerable pain. It glanced towards Zhongling, let out a roar, and then surprisingly shifted its target. Abandoning its pursuit of Zhang Liang and its intended sacrifice, it charged towards the armed men. The gunmen were a group of foreign men, likely the companions of the woman Zhang Liang had saved. Zhang Liang found something odd. However, their firearms seemed antiquated, too primitive, almost obsolete. Zhang Liang wasn't an expert on weaponry, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The chimpanzee, however, was utterly berserk and unstoppable. It battered the walls, sending stones flying, and the armed foreigners retreated hastily, unwilling to engage the raging beast. Zhang Liang, accompanied by the Caucasian beauty, joined their ranks, but he dared not reveal his extraordinary abilities. The city wall was situated by the sea, and it wasn't long before the group retreated to the shore, with nowhere left to go. Several small boats were surprisingly present on the beach, and this was the reason for their retreat in this direction. A large ship was visible in the distance at sea. These people must have arrived here via this vessel. One could say that foreigners possess a powerful adventurous spirit. Zhang Liang was overjoyed, finally able to escape this dreadful place. The group boarded the small boats in shifts, firing continuously at the chimpanzee, providing cover for each other, and preventing it from approaching the boats. Once everyone was aboard, they rowed with all their might, neglecting to fire their weapon, and the small boat sped away from the island at an incredible pace. The chimpanzee roared angrily from the shore, but it dared not enter the water to pursue them. Its fury kept it lingering on the beach, pacing back and forth. Those in the small boats exchanged glances, bursting into unrestrained laughter that echoed across the water, interspersed with the chimpanzee's enraged howls. Even the chimpanzee's roars couldn't diminish the joy of their narrow escape. Instead, they only amplified their jubilation. Upon boarding the ship, Zhang Liang was greeted with such enthusiastic welcome that he was utterly bewildered and at a loss. A beautiful white woman even gave him a hug, which gradually helped Zhang Liang understand that they were likely thanking him for saving her. Although language was a barrier, he could still feel their kindness. They even found a set of clothes for him. His original clothes had been destroyed on the island. His long island life had left him grimy and unkempt, his hair and beard unkempt for over half a year. Although he had bathed by the sea lacking shampoo and soap, his hair was matted together. He was draped in the hide of some unknown beast, a veritable savage. Life on the island had been pure torture. Without that small tree, Zhang Liang might have died long ago. But after Zhang Liang bathed, changed clothes, and had his hair and beard trimmed, the people on the ship were speechless with astonishment, especially the white woman he had rescued. Her eyes shone with admiration. Zhang Liang was already handsome to begin with, but after repeated enhancements by Xiao Shu, he was practicing on the island, constantly battling ferocious beasts, had further refined his bearing, setting him apart from the ordinary. But Zhang Liang cared little for such things. All he wanted was to return, to escape this uncanny island. He longed to contact his family and reassure them of his safety. Chapter 04 in Understanding and Departure. The language barrier was a major problem. Not a soul on board understood Chinese. There was another person of Chinese descent on the ship, which initially surprised Zhang Liang. To his disappointment, however, the man was a full-blooded American, completely incapable of speaking Chinese. Perhaps he'd heard of China, but asking him to speak Chinese would have been torture. What puzzled Zhang Liang was that the ship didn't immediately set sail to leave the island, instead remaining moored nearby. Several heated arguments erupted, and because of the language barrier, Zhang Liang couldn't understand their cause. The arguments were fierce, mainly between a large white man and the captain. Or perhaps it was just the two of them arguing and deliberately avoiding the others on board. It was Zhang Liang's guess that the man was the captain, based on his attire and the respect shown to him by the crew. It wasn't exactly an argument. Mostly the fat man was talking, his tone impassioned and persuasive. After a lengthy speech, the fat man seemed to convince the captain, who shortly thereafter began distributing firearms to his crew in an orderly fashion. Initially, a tall black man argued with the captain. Zhang Liang guessed he was the first mate, or someone of high rank on board. He was the only one who challenged the captain. But the captain's authority was considerable. He quickly persuaded the man, issuing one order after another. He then had a large number of crates brought up from the hold. Zhang Liang observed that the crates contained neatly arranged bottles. He couldn't identify their contents, but the crew handled them with great care. The bottles were all labeled in English, which Zhang Liang couldn't understand. He now appreciated the efforts of his English teacher and deeply understood the importance of learning the language. Yet, inexplicably, a strange sense of familiarity washed over him. He hadn't felt this way on the island, but the feeling intensified. A fog seemed to cloud his mind, obscuring the problems. Much like the island perpetually shrouded in mist, perpetually deprived of sunlight, Zhang Liang felt this way now, though he could see clearly, lacking any real clues. He dismissed it as a delusion, but as he watched all this unfold, the strangeness intensified, the truth seeming to draw nearer, and Zhang Liang instinctively felt that this truth would be highly unfavorable to him. Meanwhile, the ship, instead of sailing away, had prepared itself and was again setting out in a small boat towards the eerie island. Zhang Liang felt something was wrong, yet a growing familiarity, an increasing clarity, a sense that the truth was veiled by only the thinnest of silks. Turning to look at the blonde woman he'd rescued from the island, a sudden flash of lightning seemed to crack through his mind, illuminating everything. The small tree in his mind vibrated incessantly. but Zhang Liang ignored it, a mixture of sorrow and joy flooding him as he finally confirmed this wasn't Earth, and he was far from his family and friends. That's not entirely accurate. This was Earth, just not the Earth where Zhang Liang lived. It's a bit convoluted. But in simpler terms, Zhang Liang had traveled through time. He had traveled to another Earth in a parallel universe, or more accurately, Zhang Liang had traveled to the world of the movie King Kong. This explained all the strangeness, the eerie island and the terrifying gorilla, why the island's animals were so abnormally large, why dinosaurs existed, why so many prehistoric creatures still thrived. Because this wasn't Earth, not the place where Zhang Liang lived, but the world of King Kong. This world was the reason for all these things. Their absence would have been the true anomaly. The beautiful white woman had rescued from the island must be the movie's leading lady Anne. No wonder he'd felt such a strange sense of familiarity. Zhang Liang had seen this movie a long time ago. Now, finding himself trapped within it, the source of that unsettling feeling became clear. His earlier guess had been right. The white fat man he'd argued with was indeed the shipper's captain, and Zhang Liang also had a hunch about the subject of their argument. That white fat man must be one of the sources of tragedy in the movie King Kong. He was the director, Carl Denham, a nearly washed-up filmmaker in the King Kong world. But this Denham was no ordinary man. He'd used his silver tongue to convince a large group of people to make a film for free. He'd written a bunch of worthless checks, when in reality he was broke. A penniless pauper, even his investors had pulled out, and yet he still managed to convince a large group of people to sail out to sea, giving the captain a bad check, and using a tattered map to steer the ship off course. They sailed towards the legendary Skull Island, home to King Kong, the giant ape, and later, it was he who incited the captain to capture King Kong, bringing the ape into human society, ultimately leading to Kong's demise. The love story between Kong and Anne in the movie had captivated countless viewers, while Kong's death left many heartbroken, weeping uncontrollably. Ultimately, it all stemmed from that fat white man, Denham, or perhaps it was human greed. Zhang Liang had once lamented Kong's death, and now he was actually in the world of King Kong. If he could, he still wanted to change the ending, or perhaps it had already changed. Zhang Liang had rescued the heroine, Anne, early, preventing Kong from ever meeting her. Kong remained the untamed king of the jungle, but as things stood, the fat Denham still harbored plans to capture Kong, and had successfully persuaded the captain. That's what Zhang Liang had overheard them arguing about earlier. The inertia of history was truly difficult to overcome. It has to be said, that fat white man Denham was incredibly skilled. He'd be a top salesman if he ever decided to go into sales. In the movie, Denham's success in capturing Kong was largely due to luck. The traps set by humans were completely ineffective against him. Enough to knock out an entire ship's crew, was agonizingly slow acting on Kong. Zhang Liang had seen the crates full of it earlier. Kong's capture was entirely due to his feelings for the heroine, and his unwillingness to retreat led to his eventual sedation. Now, without Anne's presence, Kong would never engage in a fight with humans. He could easily escape. If King Kong held a grudge, and after the chloroform ran out, the captain and his men would be in grave danger. A deafening roar echoed across Skull Island, accompanied by the chaotic sounds of gunfire and screams. From the ship, Zhang Liang could clearly see the furious form of the rampaging gorilla. As he had predicted, the captain's trap proved utterly ineffective against King Kong. The enraged ape casually flung 2 crew members into the air. Zhang Liang, with his enhanced senses, could even see the spray of blood as they flew, their lives extinguished in mid-air. The captain and his men fled in utter disarray. Unlike their previous narrow escapes, this time they were severely wounded, their injuries deep and agonizing. Thanks to the sacrifice of several loyal crew members who volunteered to hold the rearguard, the captain and his remaining men managed to escape back to the ship alive, but they were all consumed by fear and terror, weeping uncontrollably. Zhang Liang even witnessed one of the seriously injured, the fat man Denham, with his chest caved in. Clearly beyond saving, several people surrounded him, seemingly for his last words, but he couldn't even speak, and in a flash, he breathed his last. What truly horrified Zhang Liang was the sight of a shadowy figure, an exact replica, drifting from his body and being instantly absorbed by a small tree. Simultaneously, Zhang Liang felt a stream of energy, like flowing water, pouring into his mind, instantly clarifying his thoughts. A torrent of Denham's life experiences flashed through his mind, but it was like watching a fast-forward recording, completely unclear. The images grew dimmer and dimmer, vanishing in an instant. It felt like a long time had passed in Zhang Liang's mind, but to those around him, he had only paused for a moment. The first thing Zhang Liang did after regaining his composure was to look at Denham's corpse. Seeing that it hadn't disappeared, he involuntarily breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, God. Heaven's sake, it's a demon. Ah, my hand is broken. Strangely, Zhang Liang could now understand what the people around him were saying. He guessed that it was due to the shadow he had just absorbed. That must have been the person's soul. The strangeness of the little tree left Zhang Liang somewhat unsettled, but he quickly dismissed it. There was nothing he could do about it anyway. The little tree was beyond his current control. Strangely, Zhang Liang had absolutely no memory of Denham. His English felt more like instinct. Everything that had happened in his mind before seemed like a hallucination. Boom. Zhang Liang felt a dizzying spin. The small tree vibrated violently, causing him to vanish from his spot in the blink of an eye. Dragon and Snake Epic. Chapter 005. The Fierce Power of Xuanhuan. Zhang Liang felt dizzy and disoriented, taking a long while to recover. He found himself no longer on the boat but in a park. He could only manage a wry smile, finally understanding why he had suddenly appeared on Skull Island. It was all that little tree's doing. He just didn't know where he was now. Judging from his surroundings, however, this seemed to be modern society. High-rise buildings surrounded him. While the air wasn't as good as on Skull Island, Zhang Lang could have been happier to be in this environment. Heaven knows if he'd have gone mad if he'd stayed on Skull Island any longer. He hadn't had a decent meal in over half a year. Starting a fire on Skull Island was incredibly difficult, almost unimaginable. Every time Zhang Lang had to steal fire from the island's natives, the hardships he endured were beyond description. Leaving the park, Zhang Lang strolled aimlessly through the streets, savoring the long-lost sights of modern society. He patted his pockets, finding them as empty as his face. He racked his brain, but couldn't think of a decent solution just then. He spotted a group of small-time thugs loitering on the street, swaggering and showing off. A smile crept onto his lips. Turning down a secluded alley, a favorite haunt of such thugs, he quickly robbed a few of them, making off with a few hundred yuan. For someone with his strength, honed from battling Tyrannosaurus Rex, robbing a few punks was a gross underutilization of his abilities. He had to hold back considerably to avoid killing them. He wasn't worried about them calling the police. These kinds of thugs usually had a record, so reporting it might even get the wrong people arrested. Delighted, he went to a street food stall and ate 7 or 8 bowls of noodles. He sighed with contentment. Now this is real food. What I was eating on that island, it brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it. Zhang Lang now had a profound respect for Bear Grylls. Survival in the wild was truly no life for a human being. He wanted to order another 10 or 8 bowls, but the stall owner refused, visibly sweating. The man had already eaten 7 or 8 bowls. If he ate any more, he might get sick, and her little business could afford the consequences. Kindly, she advised him. Young man, did you get your heart broken? You can't punish yourself like this. Your health is important. Go home, or your parents will worry. Zhang Lang was speechless for a moment, seeing the determined look on the old woman's face. He knew he couldn't eat the noodles there. He could only repeatedly agree and turn to leave. From a distance, he could still hear the stall owners lament young people these days. They can't take a hit. He changed streets and found another small stall to eat noodles. He ordered 7 or 8 bowls, barely half filling his stomach. For his appetite, eating his fill was a major problem. He wandered aimlessly through the street, experiencing this long-lost human life, and felt an inexplicable sense of happiness. Zhang Liang discovered that this place was no different from the earth he had lived on. Even the history was the same. Only the time seemed off when he had traveled. It was already 2017, but this place wasn't enveloped, seemingly stuck in the past. He wondered if it was his past. Zhang Lang was excited, but unsure. The previous world had dealt him a heavy blow. He had always believed it was his earthly home. He found a public phone booth and dialed his parents' number from memory. Beep, beep, beep. Zhang Liang's heart was in his throat, more excited than when fighting a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The number you dialed is not in service. Please check the number and dial again. The automated female voice was powerless, and when Zhang Liang heard it, his heart sank, and he felt like he had fallen into hell. It took several deep breaths to calm himself down. He didn't feel like wandering around anymore. He had wanted to find a hotel to rest. But then he remembered he was undocumented. Without even an ID card, he decided to just find somewhere to make do. After much deliberation, he decided the park where he had first arrived in this world was a good option. He turned around and went back, deciding to stay in the park. During the day he wandered around aimlessly, doing nothing. When he was short of money, he robbed a few small-time thugs. He lived a carefree life, returning to the park to rest at night. Quite content with his situation, he didn't know what to do now. He asked the little tree in his mind every day, but got no. He didn't know what kind of world this was, or why the mysterious little tree had brought him here. He stayed in the park for over half a month, still with no clue what kind of world this was. He was completely lost. Then, one day in early December, the weather suddenly turned cold. In a single night, a howling north wind swept in. Snowflakes fell heavily. By daybreak a thick layer of snow covered the ground. Wearing only a single shirt, Zhang Lang felt no cold. It was just after 5 in the morning. But the heavy snow had brightened the sky. As usual, he strolled casually through the park, but he spotted a figure. Zhang Lang felt a strange sense of unease. The park was secluded, bordering the river, and was the subject of unsavory rumors. Let alone this early in the morning. Modern people didn't wake up this early. As Zhang Liang drew closer, he saw a woman practicing martial arts. Her style was unusual, resembling Tai Chi, yet lacking its characteristic tranquility and ease. The woman appeared to be in her 20s, dressed in a white tracksuit and white running shoes, her hair neatly tied in a ponytail. Zhang Liang's ears twitched. He turned to see a student in uniform approaching, likely on their way to school. The student, approximately 5'5", looked to be 15 or 16 years old, slender and unremarkable in appearance. His demeanor was rather timid and withdrawn, the kind of child who was a teacher's pet and a parent's pride, but also the type easily bullied. Zhang Lang had lived through a similar student life, so he empathized. The student, captivated by the woman's martial arts practice, forgot about school and remained watching Zhang Liang. Too felt a growing curiosity. He sensed something extraordinary about the woman, a strange, almost supernatural feeling, a faint aura of killing intent. After an indeterminate amount of time, the woman suddenly stopped. She brought her hands sharply to her forehead, then slowly lowered them to her abdomen. She lightly stamped her left foot on the ground and exhaled deeply. Zhang Lang clearly saw White plume of breath shoot straight out from the woman's mouth, like an arrow suddenly released. The student was dumbfounded, as if encountering something unbelievable, his face full of astonishment. He tried to imitate her exhaling, but only managed to puff out clouds of white mist. He kept trying until his face was flushed and he felt dizzy. The woman finished her form, didn't linger, and walked directly out the park. As she passed Zhang Liang and the student, she smiled slightly and nodded in greeting. Zhang Liang returned the smile, already harboring suspicions about the world. For the next few days, Zhang Liang saw the woman practicing her form in the park every morning. The student also came every day, seemingly attending school nearby. The weaver remained unfazed, continuing her practice, completing her movements with the same precision, or raising her hands, pressing her abdomen, stepping, and exhaling, her breath meeting the cold air, still transformed into thin, long white lines that shot out a considerable distance. Like arrows, Zhang Liang had his suspicions, but he did interrupt, simply watching from the side. The woman continued to nod and smile, her demeanor gentle and unspeaking. Leaving after her practice, Zhang Liang noticed the student wanted to approach and strike up a conversation each time, yet couldn't muster the courage. He watched without speaking. It was like seeing his younger self. He didn't say anything. But based on his guess, the student was none other than the later renowned Wang Chao, Wang the Invincible, and the woman was undoubtedly Wang Chao's future wife, Tang Zikan, a Tang sect prodigy who had honed her skills to perfection. A top-tier martial arts master in this world. After a week, Wang Chao finally summoned the courage to approach her sister. What kind of martial art are you practicing? Zhang Liang also stepped forward. It looks incredibly powerful. I haven't seen anyone teach it around here. What kind of martial art is it? Tang Zikan smiled. It's Goshu. Zhang Liang knew everything was falling into place. This chance encounter would set Wang Chao on an extraordinary path, the start of it all. Zhang Liang also wanted to learn Guoshu, and so he followed Wang Chaos' lead. What is Guoshu? Zhang Liang asked further. Tang Zikan smiled again. Martial arts for killing, not for show. That's Guoshu. Wang Chao was even more impressed and wanted to become her apprentice, as did Zhang Liang, who had realized his own shortcomings on Skull Island. Despite his great strength and speed, his fighting skills were seriously lacking. He mostly relied on brute force. Approach. Sister, can you teach me? This was Wang Chao attempting to be cute. Can you teach me? Zhang Liang added, his heart full of anticipation. Every Chinese person harbors a wuxia dream, and he was no exception. Tang Zikan carefully examined Wang Chao and Zhang Liang from head to toe, then nodded. You've followed me for a week, showing some perseverance. What are your names? My name is Wang Chao. I'm 16 years old, a high school student. What's your name, sister? Zhang Liang, 21 years old, unemployed. I'm Tang Zikan. Tang Zikan always smiled. While Wang Chao was unremarkable, Tang Zikan was undoubtedly surprised by Zhang Liang's self-introduction, giving him an extra glance. Tall and leggy, Zhang Liang had an impressive demandly looking like an unemployed drifter. However, she didn't mind. Her purpose here was to take on students, to prevent the loss of Goshu. Tang Zikan, always decisive, immediately began teaching Zhang Liang and Wang Chao the horse stance. Zhang Liang was pleasantly surprised that Tang Zikan was actually teaching him, and he naturally applied himself diligently. When squatting, the force must first reach the soles of your feet. When rising, the 5 toes should grip the ground like a chicken's claws. This engagement of the toes activates the leg bones and muscles, naturally straightening the knees. Straight knees tense the thighs, lifting the waist and tightening the abdomen. This is the upward force. When lowering, your feet should resemble a duck's or goose's webbed feet, with the 5 toes relaxed. This relaxes the knees and thighs, allowing the waist to settle and the abdomen to expand. Through this subtle up and down movement, the body center of gravity is constantly shifted, preventing prolonged strain on any one area and avoiding injury. As Tank, Wang Chao and Zhang Liang only saw her body subtly rising and falling, like ripples on water stirred by a gentle breeze. Initially, Wang Chao couldn't replicate this up and down movement, but with Tang Zikan by his side, she would kick him whenever his posture was incorrect. Where she kicked felt like a needle prick, stimulating his muscles, instantly bringing the force into place. For some reason, Zhang Liang found it surprisingly easy, achieving the movement effortlessly. Much to Tang Zikan's astonishment, the up and down movement shouldn't be large, just an inch of movement from the toes. In each up and down movement, precisely control that 1-inch movement. The more precise, the better. Tang Zikan's instruction was strict. After less than 20 minutes, Wang Chao felt dizzy, nauseous, and on the verge of vomiting, while Zhang Liang, with his extraordinary physique, felt little discomfort. Are you feeling dizzy? Like C? With a feeling of nausea, Tang Zikan seemed to know exactly how Wang Chao felt. Tang Zikan, just as in the original story, took Wang Chao and Zhang Liang to climb the embankment. As soon as Wang Chao stepped onto the embankment, he felt the river surging forward, vast and boundless. The water splashed against the banks, the snow lay thick on either side, and the scenery was truly captivating. As he gazed upon the scene, Wang Chao felt his whole body rest. His legs weren't aching anymore, nor his waist. Zhang Liang felt equally comfortable and grew increasingly respectful of Guoshu. After only an afternoon of practice, he felt significant improvement. His control over his strength noticeably enhanced, and this was just from practicing the horse stance. This episode is complete. Welcome to subscribe. Turn on the small bell forward. Please leave your comments. I will continue to update the content behind.